This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, and so I would encourage everybody who's not speaking to make sure they're on mute, except when you have something that you want to speak about to the group. I'm happy to introduce Tammy Govea. I mean, I've known her for quite a while. She's represented the 14th Middlesex District, which includes towns like Concord and Acton and Chelmsford. She brings public health to all of her work. She has her doctorate in public health, and she brings that public health perspective to all of her work. And a lot of her work is also dealt with climate. She's introduced a number of important climate bills and supported them. We've worked with her in the last 2 sessions on some of that legislation, and it's been great. And now she's running for lieutenant governor, and she'll be on the ballot in September, the primary ballot there. So we wish her luck. And she's been a great ally, and we're really glad to have her here today. Tammy?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rick. Thank you, Elders Climate Action. It's really great to join you all for about 50 minutes this afternoon, I guess now. So yeah, really proud and honored to be with all of you. Look forward to being in conversation with you here today. Just really briefly, my work in public health and environmental health and climate justice really started when I was a resident growing up in the city of Lowell. And I know you know this, that a lot of our gateway cities, our low income communities and communities of color are hit particularly hard by environmental hazards and are also particularly hit hard by climate justice. And so I started work in environmental health in 1995 when I was a student at Mount Holyoke College, really looking at housing and other environmental hazards that impacted families living in the city, particularly those who are living in female-headed households. And so that's really the beginning of a lot of the work that I have continued to champion as an activist and as a state representative and as a doctor of public health, and of course now as a candidate. And when I first ran for state rep for the 14th Middlesex, because I moved to Acton about 14 years ago, I ran for office about 4 years ago. And just hearing and seeing the commitment to the folks in the 14th Middlesex District to the climate crisis, I made climate change and transportation two of the major issues that I focused on as a state representative, and filed legislation with advocates like those at Mass Climate Action Network, and really sought the counsel of the Mass MAPC. So some of the things that we were able to do is get that net zero stretch energy code language into the next gen bill. We know it's not perfect. We know that the DOER's straw policy proposal leaves a lot to be desired, particularly in the space around major renovations and retrofits. And so through the budget process, I filed a budget amendment to create a $200 million retrofit fund, because one of the things that I really believe firmly in is that here I am now in the town of Concord, town of Acton, representing Concord, Carlisle, Chelmsford, and Acton. And I haven't forgotten the experiences that I had growing up in the city of Lowell. So really believe firmly that we need to have some of these major funds set aside so that low and moderate income families and renters can also access some of the technologies, the green technologies that we're all going to need to have to heat our homes, cool our homes, air ventilation, to charge our cars, et cetera, et cetera. So I know there's a lot more work for us to do. I know that you all have been leading on a lot of that work, and really appreciate the work that you've been doing, to really engage environmental voters in showing up at the polls, because we know that we need to be doing that regardless of who you choose to vote for, whether you choose to vote Republican or Green Party or Independent, Democrat, it doesn't matter. We need, climate activists to be engaged in the policy making process, beginning with holding candidates accountable for really taking the climate crisis seriously. So that's some of the work that I've continued to do as a state representative. And I know one of the reason why I'm talking about this is because one of the questions that was posed to me prior to joining this call is, what do we see is for us to do next? And some of it is the work that I've continued to do in strengthening the net zero stretch code, creating those retrofit funds, or pushing for those. And then also legislation that I co-filed with Senator Eldridge to allow our municipalities to require that, the all electric buildings. I'm really super excited that it seems like there might be some appetite to have a statewide requirement and not have it be just something that's taken up at the local level. But we started with the local level just as a way to really open up that conversation. Excuse me, I'm sure you're aware that, in the House, we took up the wind bill, and in the Senate, there's a much more, I would say, robust, comprehensive next step in what we need for bolder climate legislation. Those two bills are still in conference committee. I can't predict what will happen with those two bills and what might come out in terms of a single bill for us to take up. As you know, the legislative session, I'm sorry, I just got distracted because a deer is walking across the street. And I live on a busy street, so I hope he makes it. But the bills are in conference. As you know, legislative session ends July 31st. So I don't know what that means, if we're going to have enough time to take this up before formal session officially ends in July. But that's the latest. That was also a question that was put to me, but I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to give you those sort of like big picture highlights. What I see are some of the next steps. And of course, making sure that whatever we're doing, that we are putting racial and economic justice also at the center of our response, so that we're not leaving anybody behind as we make these critical transitions and just transitions that we need to make, so that we have a planet that our future generations can live on. I believe the planet will still be here even if we continue down the path that we're on, but the question is, who's going to be able to live here and under what constraints and conditions and circumstances. So I'll stop there and start to engage in dialogue.
So if you've got a question, you can either put it in the chat or stack. I see Tina's already done that, which indicates we're going to call on you, Tina, for your question, or you can raise your hand here. With as many people as we have, it's sometimes easier to use the chat. So Tina, you've already got a question, so go ahead.
Well, welcome, Rep. Gouvet. It's so great to see
Hi,
you.
Tina. You all can call
Hi
me
there.
Tammy. A lot of us are very familiar, so nice seeing you all. Yes, Tina.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule. I know. I have more of a kind of a different kind of a question. Who are you going to be looking to as Lieutenant Governor to get your expertise from? How are you going to be framing your work when you get into the administration?
Yeah, and I think this is regardless of who is in the corner office. I really do hope that we start to leverage the expertise that we have right here in our backyard. Some folks who are on this call were part of a simulation exercise that we went through on Saturday in Maynard, using MIT and Climate Interactive's En-ROADS tool to really help people see all of the efforts that we need to take on to address the climate crisis. So, relying on simulation tools like that to bring very diverse groups together to look at what's it really going to take. I think we have to continue to also beat back the narrative of, well, it's on individuals to solve the climate crisis, and that there's not a whole lot that government and industry and business and small organizations need to do. I think we have to continue to call that out as a ploy to bump responsibility to the individual rather than looking at it from a systemic perspective. So we have experts who can do that with us in policymaking spaces. We have experts who can do that with all of you as advocacy organizations. And it's really going to take sort of that kind of all hands on deck kind of approach. So I think those are the kinds of things that we need to bring into government and into policy making a lot more than we have. And one of the things, Juliet, who is Dr. Juliet, who is one of the facilitators of this exercise over the weekend, she was talking to some climate policy advocates in Vermont, and they said, oh yeah, I know we need to take bold change. And then when they went through the exercise and had collective dialogue, they realized just how much they were really giving it lip service. And so I think that's probably happening a lot in our own communities, even among some of us, maybe even in this space. Just, once you really start to dig into the details of what it's really going to require to make this really big change, that it's not just on individuals, is pretty critical. I think the other thing that's also really, really important is that we contend with the fact that we are in a lot of our communities, we have heat islands that are contributing to the warming of community spaces. There are a lot of low-income folks who don't have access to air conditioners or other ways to cool down in the high temperature heat that we expect to see again this summer, just like we did last summer. So we have to address the urgent crisis that is already here, which is we are already being impacted by climate change. Last year, helped deliver air conditioners, which is not the solution, I know, but we helped deliver air conditioners to families in Brockton who couldn't keep their windows open because you recall we had the forest fires out west that were ruining our air quality here. And for low-income folks in particular, whose children have asthma and other respiratory illnesses, they couldn't keep their windows open because of the air quality. But then if they closed their windows, then they had no way to cool down. So it was like a catch-22 that they were in. So we're going to have more of those, those kinds of immediate needs. We're also going to need to address while we really pivot quickly to the bigger things that we need. But it's about relying on a lot of the experts that we already have here who go underutilized. And I don't know if folks know this, but UMass Lowell is one of the most sustainable campuses in the whole country. They're a best kept secret, in addition to MIT and Harvard and BU and some of the other big schools that we also have right here in our backyard. We're very lucky. We just don't leverage those experts often enough.
So Maria Bartlett from Andover has a question. Maria, do you answer it yourself? It's here in the chat.
It's fine. I mentioned it already, but I think my state senator Barry Feingold is a sponsor, but there's supposedly an amendment to the budget bill on requiring DPU to move on the towns that have submitted applications for CCA. Andover's has been in for 2 years, and we just don't understand what the bottleneck is. And I think there's some, but I don't know I don't know how to advocate for that because I don't know what the number is. I've been looking for it. I can't find it.
Yeah, so the Senate already passed their budget. So, and so now the budget is in conference. I can see if I can get my staff to try to find it. Since I'm not in the Senate, I don't know what that bill is. Or that amendment is. I haven't been tracking it.
That's okay. I can call Barry's office. I just thought you might know.
Yeah, they'd be able to tell you. And they would also be able to tell you, because this was also one of the questions that was put to me before joining the call, is what can all of you do both now, but also, with the next administration? And right now it's anything that is, if it passed in the Senate budget, but it didn't pass in the House, it will be in the conference report. So you will be encouraged I hope you'll be encouraged by Senator Feingold's office to reach out to the conference committee members to advocate for the things that you want to see make it through to the budget.
Okay. I mean, I haven't seen anything from him, so I'll call his office and find out what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And Paul Popenchak put Stack in next. Paul?
Good afternoon, Representative Tammy.
How are
Thank you
you?
so much. I'm well, thank you. Thank you for all you do for us.
you.
As a grandfather, I'm keenly interested in the future for my grandchildren. And so I thank you for your work. I'm very interested in this bill, this fund, the retrofit fund. I'm working with the Worcester chapter of the NAACP on a triple-decker retrofit electrification program. Worcester has 4,000 triple deckers, and we also have a housing shortage. And many of these buildings have never been touched in terms of the conservation opportunities that exist. And so our study is looking at adding photovoltaics for on-site generation to these buildings, as well as doing a deep energy retrofit to reduce the utility use and the utility cost burden on the renters, many of whom are low income. And I'm just wondering if you have a sense of what the chances are for the success of that bill.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your work with the local NAACP chapter on this. This is exactly the kind of thing that we want to scale up quickly. I'm imagining that, and you tell me if I'm wrong, there is a $6 million pilot for gateway cities to do this kind of thing. So I'm hoping that you all secured some funding from that.
We did.
Mass Save, I think, is supposed to have some set aside as well. Good. I'm glad you got that. So this idea of putting in the retrofit fund in the budget that I did was just to get it on the table that we already have the pilot. We know it's going. We need to kind of get in the queue, kind of like what you're doing, stacking here, right? Like we need to stack getting a retrofit fund that's much more robust. $6 million is not going to take us very far in a Commonwealth that has hundreds of thousands of buildings that are in need of deep retrofit. So I filed that amendment in the budget on the House side. It was also filed on the Senate side. It didn't prevail in the budget, but there is a separate effort to also try to get money into the ARPA funding. The reason why I wanted it in the budget is so that it's something that we'll start to be able to rely upon. ARPA is one-time money. We know that, but ARPA might also be the place where we can start. So there was an article on this yesterday. A number of legislators went to a deep retrofit that's happening with, I think it's 280 units in Salem, doing exactly the things that you're talking about, but they have, different needs, bigger needs in some ways because of just the sheer scale of the project. And right now they have, they're not able to do passive house completely, but they're moving into the next phase to also move towards that as well. Just so that we're really taking it from like the beginning to the end, having carbon free. So I hope that answers your question. I think it's dead in the budget is the short answer, but it's alive and hopefully will move in subsequent ARPA advocacy opportunities.
Thank you very much.
And Michael, do you want to ask your question or should I read it from the chat?
No, sure. I'm glad to ask it. Hi, Tammy. I'm Michael Sales. Thank you so much for your
Hi.
service. So we've got a pretty good portfolio of people who are running for the lieutenant governor slot on the Democratic ticket. And I'm wondering, and of course, I'm aware of your work and really appreciate what you've been saying about it here. But I'm wondering how you would compare and contrast your climate advocacy and your view of how you'll be successful in bringing about needed changes with the other candidates that are vying for this position, with particular attention to Adam Hines, who I have some familiarity with.
Well, Adam Hines didn't make it onto the ballot. So
I'm out of date.
excuse me?
I'm out of date.
No, yeah. So at the Democratic convention, he didn't secure enough votes to make it onto the ballot. So the folks who made it through are myself, Kim Driscoll, and Eric Lesser. Of the three of us who will be on the Democratic ballot in the primary for September 6th, I'm the only one who has released a full platform, policy platform. It's meant to be organic. So always looking for feedback. If you say to me, hey, you're missing X, Y, Z, I will take a look at whatever that policy is. And if it's something that I support, then we will add it. So if you take a look at my website, you will see that I have a very intersectional, interconnected policy platform called the Declaration of Rights for Equitable Health, Wellbeing, and Dignity, because housing is climate change, transportation is climate change, jobs are climate change. Everything really touches on what we can do around climate change and climate justice. It's why last session and this session, I filed legislation to require that every single secretariat have a whole scope of work, a statement of purpose, budgetary priorities around health equity and climate justice, because I firmly believe that everybody has a role to play. When you look at DCAM and you look at, the building of municipal buildings, making sure that we are retrofitting those, and that if we're building new buildings, that they are net zero, that they are passive, moving in the direction and having the vision for moving in that direction. So that's how I differentiate myself too, is just, I believe that I have more of a vision of, where we can go, and really being bolder in tackling the things that we need to tackle to pivot quickly to a clean energy economy, and making sure that we are investing in jobs in that space. So I've done a lot of visiting of our vocational schools, and also talking a lot to our union folks, so that as we are, on the climate activist side and as policymakers saying we want all of these things and we want them now, but we don't have the workforce yet that's really scaled up to also meet the demand and the needs that we're going to have. And I'm really thrilled when I go out to some of the vocational schools to see what some of them already are playing around with, and what like the carpenters and through their apprenticeship programs, the ways they're playing around with solar panels that are like solar bricks, right? So moving in this different phase of the kind of construction that we need. And then also figuring out, how do we invest in jobs, manufacturing jobs, advanced manufacturing jobs, light manufacturing jobs. The way I see that we can make investments in communities like gateway cities, like where I grew up in Lowell, is to move back into where we used to really be on the cutting edge, is in the manufacturing space. There's no reason why a lot of these component parts and a lot of these materials can't be manufactured, providing really good quality jobs, good paying jobs to folks right here in the state. And they don't all have to be in Boston. They don't all have to be in Cambridge and Somerville. We can invest in Chicopee and Holyoke and Worcester, and Lowell and Lawrence, and all of these places that do have the size of the space we need, but we'll need to make investments to bring those up to scale as well. So those are the ways I differentiate. And then again, on the public health side, just having my doctorate in public health. When I did my master's, I did it in environmental health policy. So I really bring that perspective to the work. And then the social work side of me, really bringing collaboration into the space. It's why we played around with En-ROADS through a hybrid format, so that we could start to engage in that dialogue and really get folks to see that these tools exist, and start to play around with them and use them, and start to see together the urgent action we need. So those are the ways I think differently and approach the work. I think in a way that's fairly unique for anybody who's running for lieutenant governor, just that kind of mindset.
Thank you so much for that fulsome response.
So, and there's two questions which I'm going to link, one from Fran and one from Sally. And Fran or Sally, you're welcome to correct me if you don't like me linking your questions, but they're both dealing with, the role and power of a lieutenant governor relative to climate, obviously. What effect would you have to affect climate action as the lieutenant governor, say, as opposed to your role as a state rep?
Yeah.
What are we gaining? What are we losing?
You're gaining a lot more, I'll tell you. I'm not at the table. I'm not, in the back rooms where decisions are made around these issues. it would probably take me another 10 years. I'm 47 years old. I want to get to using my background as a doctor of public health and a social worker on behalf of the Commonwealth right now. I don't want to be waiting for that. And so that is what you'll gain is I will be able to form working groups and other initiatives. As the Lieutenant Governor, it's something that Tim Murray did under Deval Patrick. He had a climate focused working group. I'm not aware of one that exists right now. So I want to be a different kind of Lieutenant Governor who's really bringing the expertise that I have, bringing and leveraging the relationships that I have so that we have people right there at the table addressing and talking about these issues immediately. And then, of course, filtering that through the agencies and through the secretariat. So the thing that I just described with the legislation that I filed, it's something that I want to bring as Lieutenant Governor and pushing the governor to say, hey, we need to have, we probably need a secretary who's really focused on climate change. But if that's not something that whoever the next governor is really amenable to, making sure, or in addition to that, making sure that every single secretariat understands their role that they play. I can't do that now as a state representative, but it's something that I can advocate for as Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Tammy. By the way, let me just remind anybody who's not speaking to put themselves on mute. We're getting a little background noise.
It's actually my dog, so let me let her out so she'll stop asking.
Oh, it's you.
It's me. I'll be right back.
So we've got Tammy for another 10 or 15 minutes. I'm reading that you got great questions in stack. I'm trying to group them or select them. If we've touched one area, I may choose a slightly different question if it feel, but of course, you can always object. One question, you might have a quick, simple answer. I don't know. From Jeanette. How does the Lieutenant Governor work with a governor when they don't run together on a platform?
Yeah, I think, I've really looked to the models of Governor Dukakis and Governor Patrick, who I've spoken to through the course of running for the last year. I also spoke with Lieutenant Governor Tim Murray to understand what his role was. And oftentimes the governor really does want to leverage the expertise and the skills that the Lieutenant Governor brings to the table. So that's how I envision this moving forward with, whether we have a Chang Diaz administration or a Healy administration. I have good working relationships with both folks. So I'm really confident that they would look to me to be able to leverage my expertise. But, at the end of the day, because we do run independently, I also would see it as a mandate for me to advocate for the things that I've been talking about on the campaign trail for the last year. I wouldn't be shy about that. I've stood up to leadership in the House on numerous occasions, on numerous issues that I care about, including speaking on the House floor more than any other member, particularly about public health and climate change. And we'll continue to be that fierce advocate, because the way I see it, we are facing so many complex problems. We need someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and really get to work, and not just sort of see the role in a limited way, but really see the role in rolling up their sleeves. And that's something that I've done throughout my career. I'm going to go let my dog back in now. I'll be right back while you figure out the next question.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group two questions, one from Jerry and one from Ed, Jerry Hobblestadt and Ed Wall. They both deal with power sources. So Jerry asked about municipal light plants and how they lag in developing community participation, including rooftop and community solar. Ed talked about how do we get utilities to move faster to supply the electricity upgrades needed for buildings to electrify with, for example, heat pumps and so on.
Could I just amplify that a little bit?
Sure.
Rick, first of all, Tammy walks the walk. She showed up unannounced at a standout for the Peabody Peaker. And I know she's involved with the municipal light plant issues. And so I wanted to know what the Commonwealth can do through legislative action or other. Because some of the municipal light plants do a great job and are very forward looking, and Peabody is really retrograde. They love cheap rather than healthy. They love cheap rather than the climate, and they love oil. They love gas, and they're not transparent. And unless we get some legislative action, and I think a carrot and a stick.
Mhm.
And so realistically, what can we do in that area?
Yeah, and Peabody is still, it also has to include the federal role that the federal has, right? So that's part of the conundrum a little bit, of course. And I'm sure you've seen that there's I think it's a Supreme Court case around whether or not the EPA can regulate air quality and what mechanisms do they have the authority to really regulate. So we are, when it comes to that federal relationship, it's a pretty, it's critical, first of all, and it's also dire. I am not convinced that we have been working with our federal delegation enough on some of these and other major issues. And I think there's a role for us to play and a role for them to play, especially those who represent the districts that do abut some of the other states that are critical to the work that we want to do here, but also as it relates to that relationship at the national level. When it comes to regulatory authority within the state, I think under a different, I like the way you worded it, they prefer cheap, they love oil, they don't care as much about health, they don't care as much about climate. I would put the current administration in that same mindset, right? Because a lot of this is about a mindset. And if you have the right mindset and you have the priorities around climate and health and justice and sustainability and thriving living spaces, if you have that mindset and that commitment already, you will advocate for different policies and you will find a way to make it happen, whether it's through regulatory, whether it's through more carrots and sticks, or whether it's through legislation. And because we haven't had, administrative leadership with that kind of mindset, I do believe that is why we have dragged over the last 8 years. Baker went kicking and screaming on the roadmap bill, especially because it had the net zero language in there. That was the biggest piece because, and I think someone said something about real estate in here. I'm sure all of you read the Brown University report. So you know that real estate and development is, sixth in terms of the level of influence that they have on Massachusetts policymaking around climate change. So we need folks who are going to stand up to those in the legislature as well as in the corner office. I do believe, and this is something that I want to learn more about, especially over the next 6 months before, the swearing in of next year, is understanding who are the folks in the regulatory agencies that don't have this shared mindset that we have in this Zoom space, who might need to be transitioned to a different position so that we have the kind of leadership at the secretariat level, at the bureau level, across multiple agencies that are really embracing these ideas. If we don't have a transportation secretary who understands the need to electrify public transportation, then we're not going to see the positive effect in that space. Same for housing and, some of the things that we've already talked here. I will say, I don't know enough about MLPs. It's something that I need to learn more about because I'm a little bit spoiled with having Concord, which is a much different MLP than some of the others. So I am all for exploring what those opportunities are with those carrots and sticks. It's a little bit of how I think about the BBRS as well, the building regulations and standards, and how many of them they don't have this shared mindset, right? They're, as you say, care more about cheap and easy rather than health. And your point about transparency is also really, really important. And something that, as many of you probably in this space know, I have advocated for transparency. I have advocated for everyday average people to have more time to engage in bills that the legislature is taking up, because oftentimes we only have 3 to 5 hours to file an amendment on any bill that we get put before us in the House, which means I don't have time to confer with you all and use your expertise to make bills stronger, to make them have the kind of outcomes that we want to have. So I am not an expert in MLP, so I can't say much more than just know that I am committed to making sure that that part of the role that they have and part of the role that other utility type entities, including our water districts, that it's not just about providing high quality services for the cheapest amount, because sometimes you have to pay a little bit more to get those other things that we care about. So broadening what is the criteria. It's not just about high quality, it's also about equitable, it's about sustainable, it's about healthy, it's about affordable. Those criteria also need to be incorporated. We saw that with some of the next gen bill, some of that language change. So excited to see what might come from that, especially as we hopefully have a shift in administration who will be able to tackle these. So I hope I answered both the questions, but Rick, I'll rely on you and or Jerry to tell me if there was something.
Well, Ed Wall just added, because he was part of this, to these two questions I mushed together, and he has a
Looking for Ed. Where are you, Ed?
Thanks, Rick. I'm in
Oh, there you are. I see
Somerville.
you now.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you for your leadership. You're doing a great job. This is an issue that raises health issues because it deals with getting off fossil fuels. It also raises local issues because local mayors want to get their people to be able to get the electrical service they need to electrify. And also it deals with policy issues because it deals with ISO New England. So my question is, how do we get the utilities to move faster to supply the electricity upgrades we need for buildings to electrify if they want to put in heat pumps and electric stoves, electric hot water heaters, to achieve the goal ultimately of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, getting off fossil fuels? Because right now there's a 3 to 6 month wait, and I can't even get Eversource to call me back in Somerville right now to try to upgrade our service.
Yeah, I think there's probably multiple levers in this space. And again, this is something that I want to learn more about. It is definitely something that I have been hearing about for years, last several years, just how hard it is to get them to call you back, to get, hooked up, the systems hooked up. So I think there's probably, again, I would say probably more sticks when it comes to the utility companies than carrots. I think that they respond to, well, I think this is going to sound naive because they are just so incredibly wealthy. Hitting them with a little fine is not going to probably matter to them too much. So those sticks have to be really hit at some of the things that they really care about. So I need to learn more about what that opportunity might be. And I don't know I don't believe there's any pending legislation. It's just been a more, I don't want to say passive because that's not the right term, but maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit too polite in the ways that we've been advocating for moving towards faster hookups. I just know that, if we get a call from a constituent and we send in a letter, eventually there is some level of response, but we need real timely action. And there needs to be an expectation set in the relationship. Again, this is an area that I need to learn more about. So if you all have ideas about what those carrot and stick opportunities are, I am definitely all ears, whether it's regulatory or it's legislative.
So
the underlying factors that you've got Eversource and National Grid, both of which make money on the electric side and gas side. So what's the motivation to move one to the other? So
Right.
It's just practical world everyday stuff.
Well, that's why I leave scratching my head. Well, then what is really the what is really the opportunity to push them faster. There's got to be something, and maybe we just haven't hit on it yet.
So I
Yeah,
think we should move to one last question, given the time that's available. I don't know whether I've missed a question in stack. I've tried to combine a couple of times. I know Alan has just added a question. And David Greenberg just answered you the last discussion. He said, we have to take control of Mass Save. How about that? Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Anyway, Alan, do you want to ask a question? I think this will be the last question for today.
Sure. Hi, Tammy.
Hi, how are you, Alan?
Good, good. So my question has to do with the roadmap bill and the requirements in it to achieve a 50% reduction on our emissions below the 1990 level by 2030. And many of us have been watching very closely what the current administration has been doing with respect to planning for that. And also watching the time that's slipping by. We're already at mid 2022 and we're, just 8 years to get to where we need to be by 2030. And to many of us, it looks like it's becoming nearly impossible, that it's going to take a Herculean task to push buildings, transportation, those two things in particular, sufficiently to achieve that goal. And so I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts about what the next administration should be doing to accelerate what we've been seeing so far from the current administration to give us even a slim chance of meeting that 2030 goal of 50% reduction.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about leveraging the dollars that we already do have and finding additional sources of revenue to make those real quick investments that we need to make in transportation and the building retrofits. If we don't create those funds, I don't see how we have a chance, because your average everyday person, for the most part, can't go. First of all, we can't be the ones to change the transportation system. That has to come from the regulatory side and from the legislative side. So that investment needs to be made to electrify the system. And then when it comes to the buildings, it's the same thing. And there is going to be a lot of small landlords, a lot of multi-unit housing that's really going to drag their feet on this. And so starting to build that now, those relationships, so that when they are in a place that they're more ready to adopt some of the technology that we've been talking about here, just like the work. I'm sorry, I forget who the person was doing work with, NAACP, but that kind of effort we need to move quickly on. So when it comes to the next administration, it's about making sure that we are using dollars and that we're not just putting $6 million here and $10 million here. It needs to be multi-million-dollar access funds, and making it simple, but also high quality. We need to provide technical assistance, and we need to get the workforce. We don't have enough electricians to do this kind of work, right? And I'm sure, National Grid and Eversource, I agree that they are dragging their feet. But the reality is that they are impacted by the workforce just like everywhere else. So it's on state government to figure out how to make some of those adjustments within the workforce space, which leads into a whole host of other issues like childcare, right? We don't have a childcare system that works. So it's sort of like starting from well, what are the basic foundations that we really need? And so these are the multiple issues that I'm looking at all at the same time, because it's great to say we're going to have the workforce, but if people can't get into the workforce because they don't have childcare, they're going to stay home for another 5 years. That's going to slow us down. So a lot of the things that we were hit by even before COVID, but that COVID exacerbated, we got to accelerate in those spaces to support the needs that we have in these other areas as well. Because we just don't have the workforce across multiple industries to get this work done.
Well, Tammy, thank you. I think we're out of
Thank you,
your time.
appreciate it. Well, thank
We
you.
could keep asking you questions, I'm sure, and love the conversation with you.
I've appreciated this conversation. I appreciate you pushing hard on getting specifics. I appreciate you, coming with the breadth of knowledge, but also the breadth of topics that we covered here. And I am by no means an expert in all of these areas, but I do share the deep concern and the commitment for moving quickly to make this transition that we need to make here. So just know that I'm always open to learning and would love for you to feel free to send me more information so that I can be even more conversant on understanding these issues.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Tammy.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Talk soon.
Okay. So our next guest is Representative Paul Marks. I don't think he's with us yet. Tina, have you heard from him? Tina, where are you?
Hi. Yeah, I don't see him either, and I'm just putting in a call to his district office. That's the only phone number I have right now. Maybe we could go on and do some brief announcements while we're waiting for him to join.
Sure.
Let's see, I think we can start with a announcement. Mayim, do you have a announcement or two that you'd like to share?
I see a few people on the call who are joining us for the Forest Walk next Tuesday. That's going to be really exciting. And I'll send something out to those who are signed up. There is a possibility we could do this again. We're walking with Bob Leverett, who's known for the techniques he developed to actually measure trees and get accurate dating on them. Until Bob found them and did the measurements, people thought there were no old growth forests left in Massachusetts, but he's going to take us on what I guess is a little bit of a hike to go see some of them next week. We're full up for next week, but I mention it because if you still would like to do something like this, send me something.
Tammy, we just lost your audio.
Yeah. If you want to do this in the future, send me an email or put something in the chat, because Bob has said that he would do it again for us. And he's a very, very valuable person to go have an experience like this with. There's a couple who are members. They say they used to go walking with Bob and it was one of their favorite things. She's going to celebrate her 81st birthday with us on this walk. Let me see, who was that? Anyway, oh yeah, Penny Novak. She's going to celebrate her 81st birthday on that walk with us. Anyway, let me know if you want to do that in the future. We love organizing things like this. I think they're really great to keep us into that side of things like natural solutions and how to work with the natural world to solve some of these problems. And I will invite Tony Lee to make an announcement next.
Sure. The last event in our Let's Talk series is going to be held a week from Thursday on the 23rd, 4 o'clock. As you know, we've been experimenting with Let's Talk and the topics and presentations. And this one is going to be on vision. So we have had some hard topics like fossil fuels and the Arctic is melting. And then we have process topics like vision and the importance of starting conversations. So I would offer one other thing, Mayim, that we have a 4-session webinar, Can We Stop Climate Change? And the second meeting of that is devoted to the En-ROAD simulator. So we have somebody coming in who's a trained ambassador with that organization, and they do it for our class. And we could even easily do that on a one-evening basis for ECA. I think it'd be terrific. It is a great success. Rick, I agreed with Rick's comments and assessments. So that's one way of bringing it to the membership.
Great, thank you. This is Tina. I have a couple of announcements. MOF is going to be having their action call on Thursday, the 16th at noontime. This action call happens every month. This month is going to be on organizing households and communities to reduce the impact of peak electricity production. The link is, I can put it in the chat. It's also on their MOF website. Also, we are going to be taking our action and activist members to the next level. All of you who have been stepping up, making phone calls, sending emails over the past couple of weeks about the climate conference committee, about the climate bill. We're going to be having a Zoom meeting in a couple of weeks. We'll send that email out just to gather and organize ourselves and get feedback from each other about the best way to advocate and what next steps we would like to take. So thanks all of you who've been stepping up over the past couple of weeks to call, email, who've been responding to our action alerts. And I really appreciate it, and the leadership team really appreciates it as well. I think we have a couple more announcements. One about the deep dialogue. Arnie, would you like to do that one?
Sure. Thanks, Tina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so our next deep dialogue is on Monday, June 27th, and we'll be hosting Senator Barrett, who I'm sure most of you know is the Senate chair for TUE, one of the key architects of the climate bill, and currently in conference to work out what we're going to see for this session. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from Senator Barrett about the progress he's made, to the extent that he'll divulge that, where he thinks we've made progress so far in implementing the climate bill, and where he thinks we hopefully will be going, particularly looking towards the next session of the state legislature. One of the things we're asking is for you to post your own questions that we will have Senator Barrett prepared to speak to at the deep dialogue on the 27th. So you can, I'm going to put in the chat my own email so that you can send your questions directly to me for that deep dialogue. So I'm going to do that right now.
Thank you, Arnie. I think we might have one or two more announcements. Roger Luckman, would you be willing to make a brief announcement about looking out for next action alert?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. And in fact, at the end of the session today, we're going to give you an opportunity to take immediate action on a legislative issue, but you're probably aware that the next 3 weeks are really going to be critical in terms of what we achieve this legislative session in terms of climate. We've got a climate bill that's going to come out of conference committee, and we hear from pretty reliable sources that there will be a bill. The question is, how strong will it be? How comprehensive will it be? Will it include our priorities? So we have a job there to really be advocating for and pushing on a regular basis our priorities for the conference committee. We also have a number of bills that are still sitting in the TUE committee. They're going to be alive and well and actionable at least until June 30th. So another task is to be advocating for parts of those bills that we think belong in the climate bill to get out of committee and maybe move into the climate bill. If not, if we can get them reported out favorably, they'll be teed up for next session to be first in line. So we've got two tasks that we're working on. You all and other folks out there have already been active in pushing for our priorities. We had 70 of you send emails to every person on the conference committee about our major priorities for the conference committee bill. That was great. I'm sure people appreciated 70 emails coming into their email boxes. What the legislative team has decided to do over the next 3 to 4 weeks is to pick 2 or 3 of our main priorities and to hit them again. And to hit not only the legislators involved and the leadership involved, but also to hit staff. We hear increasingly that staff can be really critical, and if we address them directly and personally with some of our key messages and keep those messages short and focused, we might bring their attention to some of the things that we're concerned about. So look for an action alert per week and some reminders. We're going to try to make it easy using our Action Network software. You can just with one click send it to 8 people if necessary. We do have one action that we can take at the end of the session today. And I actually can put the link into the chat in just a second. Let's see if I get it down here. It's not going in there. I will put the link in the chat. And it is a letter that's going to be going to TWE leadership and staff. And it's addressing finance issues. We're pushing for the Green Bank, which if Rep. Mark, when he arrives, we'll hear more about, but also for an extension of the PACE program. The PACE program is a great loan program that allows people to pay off loans with the energy savings that they would get from making the changes that they make. So it's a win-win situation. And this would make it eligible to residents for homes, and instead of just commerce and business. And we're also pushing for an energy siting bill that's part of our EJ platform. EJ communities would really like to have more of a say about the siting of energy resources in their community. And that's still sitting in TUE. Those 3 things are in TUE. So today's action is about that, but there'll be others coming up.
Roger, there's a related question. Fran asked, what's the best way to influence the conference committee if you are not a constituent of a committee member? Does a message from a non-constituent have an impact?
Yes, it does, because the conference committee is serving us all. It's not about constituents anymore. They really have to look to all residents of Massachusetts, and they take input from everybody, and they expect everybody, even outside their constituency, to be reaching out to them. So it's perfectly legitimate to reach out directly to Michael Barrett and Representative Roy, who are the chairs of that committee, and the other several members of the committee as well. They're all fair game, and they're all expecting to receive input and advocacy from all of us. So go to it.
And Maria, you've had your hand up for a while. Is that left from our conversation with Tammy, or do you have something you want to bring up here?
No, I'm not technically a member of this group, but I like it a lot. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. If you're planning other deep dialogues, or I don't know what you call them, your focus topics. And there's a huge amount of money at the national level that is being proposed for carbon capture infrastructure. And I've attended a number of webinars about this, and it just seems to me like a huge bogus diversion of funds. And I don't know if that is an accurate assessment. And I just wonder if it's something, I mean, they're diverting huge amounts of money, billions and billions of dollars in the Biden bills. And it's a topic you might want to look into. It's huge. And the other thing is this thing I put in.
It's not available. Record your message after the tone. When you've finished, you can hang up or press 1 for more options.
Please mute everyone.
The other quick thing is I put in the chat, Heat Smart Alliance had a topic on the National Association of Realtors. They had someone from that organization. The developers and the builders are really dragging their feet, a lot of them, on building net zero, and they just want to build what they're used to building. And he said that that organization, for the very first time, has an environment and policy group now, and they are training realtors on how they can assess homes that they're selling for energy sustainability, and how they can promote those green aspects of homes. And there are 200 of those green realtors in Massachusetts, and they're really trying to increase the number. And there are also green assessors that can help with assessing a home for mortgage eligibility. So I think those are two ideas for you guys going forward to maybe explore.
Thank you, Maria.
Gratuitously, I have given you some more ideas, which I'm sure you don't need, but.
Tina, back to you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Right now, we still have not been able to get in touch with Rep. Mark. And so we're working on that, but why we're continuing to do that, that's a great topic that you brought up. So thank you very much for that, Maria, and come back to another meeting and think about joining in on one of our teams if you're interested. We need everybody to work on this together and to continue, especially right now over the next couple of weeks, as Roger said, to continue the advocacy that we've been doing, to continue to be super activists. I know it sounds repetitive, it seems repetitive, but the message is getting through to the conference committee chairs that people are watching them. They're focused on this conference bill that's coming out, and that we need to keep up the pressure right now. It's really important. Michael, I see you have your hand up again.
Yes, I believe this is correct. Maria, carbon capture is a pet project of Joe Manchin.
You don't need to say another word.
I didn't think I did. That's a word I hate. It's a word I hate to use.
I can say just a couple words about, carbon capture has been on the radar screen of the research team for some time, at least a year and a half. It's a complicated topic, and I hope we do take it up in depth at some point. And I think you're absolutely right. There may be a small role for some carbon capture in a few places, but it's probably very likely that the investment that's being made is way over the top compared to what we can expect from it. So we'll try to get into that one day. While I've got your attention, I put the link to our action alert in the chat. And while we have some downtime or during the program, anybody who wants to click on that and just quickly send off your messages to the folks in TUE, that would be great. If we all do it at once, sometimes the website gets a little cantankerous. So doing it a few at a time can work out pretty well. It's sitting right there. It says action alert link, and it's in blue.
I thought while we're in between things here, I thought of another announcement or two, and that is that we are working on in-person meetings again. We can hear from Tina or maybe Rick about the possibilities for one in the Hudson Stowe area. I'm working with Seth, who's away this week in Vermont on a needed break from all this, and Joel Kirshner on an in-person get-together for people in Brookline, Newton, JP area. Through Joel's connection to the Arboretum, we're going to be able to have a Arboretum exploration with a guide, and that the date is now going in between July 5th and 6th. But if you're in the areas of town that we're going to invite to that local gathering, you'll get an email about it as soon as we know. And I'm wondering if we should go on to our planned little action at this time, because we're not getting Rep. Mark. What do you think?
Hi, everyone. I just spoke with his district office. She said he's having some connectivity issues. And I said for him to give me a call on my cell phone. So maybe we can do it just via cell phone. We'll wait for a few minutes to see if he wants to call in. Using all the technology we have available to us. So let's hang on for a couple more minutes and see if he does call in.
Tina, would you want me to, I had a announcement about about Larry and the lecture series. I could,
Sure, please go ahead. And please,
Sure.
everybody mute. If you're not speaking, please mute.
thanks, Tina. So I think as many of you know, we lost one of our key founding members of ECA Massachusetts and a very good friend of mine, Larry Rosenberg, last month. We did one of our deep dialogues last month was in honor of Larry, and members of ECA Mass as well as 350 Mass presented a paper that Larry had finished, during his last days, and I will put in the chat the link that you can go to both see the recording of that presentation, as well as a link to the paper that Larry produced during his last days. We've also decided to honor Larry and continue our work on climate change by starting a lecture series in his name. And we'll be working as a chapter, ECA Massachusetts, along with some folks from 350 Massachusetts and other groups, to raise some funds for an annual lecture series where we'd be bringing some noted climate scientists, writers, organizers, and policy leaders to address us on important issues on climate change. And I will put into the link put into the chat, excuse me, both the link to the video recording and and Larry's paper, as well as a link to another document that you can go to that gives you instructions if you would like to donate to this lecture series. So I'll do that right now. And that's pretty much what I've got, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnie. Well, I just got a call back from Paul Mark's district office. He is looking for some good cell reception. He's out in Western Mass, and he's going to try give me a call in a few minutes. So let's hang in there. Mayim, I see you have a hand up there. Do you have your hand up, Mayim? Nope. Well, Alan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, as long as we've got time, I've got an announcement that I'd like to offer to the group. Some of you know that I'm active with my local watershed group here in the Concord, Assabet, and Sudbury River basins. And the watershed group is called OARS. And once a year, we have a really fun and challenging and inspiring event. It's a film festival of a series of award-winning environmental films, short ones. And it is a bit of a fundraiser for OARS. It's being offered both live at the Maynard Theater this Wednesday for $20, or you can watch the films online. I think the charge there is only $15. And they are really interesting films, challenging, like I say, inspiring. I would encourage as many of you who are interested in this sort of thing to check it out. I will put in the chat some information about OAR's website and where you can get tickets. But I really recommend this event. I've been viewing these films for probably 15 years, and they just seem to get better and better. These are professional, award-winning short films, all environmentally based.
Thanks, Alan. Can you put the information in the chat for us?
Sure, I'll do that shortly.
Any other announcements while we are waiting for Rep. Mark here? I do see that we have a couple of a hand up. Barbara Tinker, did you have your hand up?
Hi, yes. I just was thinking about oars and that you might be interested. I live at Applewood, which is a residential community for the geriatrics. And we have frequent environmental documentaries, and it's a large group of very committed people. So I'm really asking, I will tune into oars, and anything that inspires you, if you could just, I'll put my email in the chat. I love your group here, and I, do follow it and enjoy the newsletter and the wonderful work that you do. But I can get a good group here to follow the media. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. That's great. And if you're at all interested, maybe at Applewood to have someone from ECA come and give a talk there. And we do have people who go out to the community and give presentations. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch.
Yes, I have shared this with the group, and I've given the newsletter to the group, but not a person who has experience with the, many years. So that would be wonderful. Sylvia, sorry.
Well, just get in touch with us, Barbara. Send us an
I will.
email, and we would love to that. Sylvia, you're on
Yes.
mute. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think I'm unmuted now. I'm delighted, Barbara, that you spoke and identified yourself as living at Applewood, because I'm about 1 week from tomorrow, I'm going to be living at Loomis in South Hadley, which is one of the Loomis retirement communities. And I want to get that group involved in climate work. And I was planning to somehow find a way to connect with ECA. So you said that there are speakers who might come and talk to a group. Is that what you said, Tina?
Yes, absolutely. You can get in touch with Arnie Epstein at the research team, or Rick Lent from the education team, and we would be glad to set up a Zoom meeting.
I think Arnold is the person who put his email address on the link on the chat today, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that Arnold?
Yep.
And who was the other person you said?
Rick Lent also heads up the education team, and he would also be glad to speak with you about setting up either a Zoom presentation.
And Barbara Tinker, I would love to speak with you. Would you be willing to put your email on the chat? Is she here?
I'm here. I just unmuted myself. And
okay.
Yes, we've overlapped in Mary Jo McFay's groups, and I've known about you more than you've known about me. So I think this is great. I think we should get together and talk about Loomis as an overall organization.
Yes, I'd like to do that. So can you give me your email? Can you put your email address?
Going right. The address is in chat, and I will put everything that I can in it, and I'll submit it in just a minute after
you
my
say
chat.
You're going to put your address in the chat?
Yes, the address is in the chat, but it's not submitted yet because I'm adding my phone number.
Okay, great. I'm so glad that we're connecting.
Okay, it's in.
Okay, I see B Tinker at Tinker at Concord.org. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's because that's years in Concord.
I see. Okay.
We were very early.
We'll be in touch.
Oh, good. Thank
you,
Sylvia.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to that.
This is great. Thank you, ladies. This is just the kind of networking and communication that keeps this keeps ECA going. And I see Mayim with a hand raised. Go ahead, Mayim.
I was going to say that too, but I also wanted to say, and I didn't want to say this while Tammy was on there, did you notice how she talked about she wanted to get our expertise on issues that she didn't know about? And she mentioned she wished she had the time to consult with us on some of these things. I just thought that was so great that we're developing such a great relationship with her and that she appreciates us. Thanks to Tina and Rick, especially for doing that. But, you know, that's not the first legislator I've heard that from. And I love it that this organization is developing that kind of powerful relationship with our legislators. So I wanted to just draw that to your all attention, how effective this is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we are the people.
We need more legislators and administrators who know what they don't know and are able to listen.
Yes.
It sometimes seems like a very rare trait. And not to take anything away from what we as a group accomplished to be worthy of being heard, but it's so gratifying to have a legislator say, I don't know, but maybe you can help me find out.
Right.
My little comment.
Hold on. Okay, everybody, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have Paul Mark on the phone, and while he's on the phone, I'm going to put him on speaker, and we'll save your questions till the end, Alan, if you're willing to wait. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, Paul, can you hear me? Paul, are you there? Paul, are you there? Oh, we seem to have lost a connection with him. Well, Alan, go ahead while I see if I can get him.
It's just a footnote on the last set of comments about how great it is that Tammy is asking us for, advice and input. This is an example of what you get when you do what I've always recommended when you're trying to build an advocacy group. It's to make sure that when people have a legislator, you end up building a relationship with that legislator. And it's obvious that Rick has got a long-standing relationship with Tammy. I've met her a couple times. I wouldn't say I have a deep relationship with her. But when you get that, then you can have a legislator who's willing to turn to you because they trust you. And they will ask you for advice and for input and suggestions. It will not happen all the time. But it's more likely to happen if you've built that relationship with that legislator.
I'm seeing in this meeting that we have members here from all across the state. And I know we have in the past felt we didn't have so much of a good connection out through the western and northern parts of the state. So you guys who are here from those parts, I forget who it is. There's somebody from Springfield here. There's a North Shore. Take Alan's words to heart, call and write your legislators because we really need to develop that.
Yeah.
I just have to, Alan, I have to correct one impression. I don't know who knows Tina, who knows Tammy longer, me or Tina, because Tina worked with her on smoking cessation legislation starting back in what? 20?
Well, I think I met Tammy in about 2006.
Oh,
Yep,
we're tied then. We're tied. Okay.
Yep, 2005, 2006 in public health, and she did a phenomenal job being a champion there and has continued it in her work in public health as a legislator as well. I apologize, everyone. I had Rep. Mark on the phone, and as cell service must have dropped out for him. If Arnie or Roger, if you have the actual phone number for this Zoom, if you could put it in the chat to me, maybe I can send it to him. So I apologize again. Thanks for hanging in there and doing all this networking and connecting. Alan, I see your hand up again.
Yes, Tina, I have my hand up.
Mine's just an artifact. I'll take it down.
John has his up.
Yeah, just a quick comment here, actually, too. First of all, if we don't get to talk to Paul this afternoon, he does have a town hall meeting at 7 o'clock tonight with our group. I have put that information in the chat.
Ah,
You can obtain any of you on this call. If you want to join that town hall meeting, you're more than welcome to. I'll be the one who's hosting it. It's being hosted by our small indivisible group, Voices Rising Together. We plan to ask him some climate-related questions. So if we only get a short time with him this afternoon or not at all, feel free to join us at 7. And his website is votepaulmark.com. And if you go to that website, at the top, there are various tabs, including an events tab. Click on the events tab, and that will take you to the Zoom link.
Thank you, John, so much. I think I have Paul on the phone right now. Paul, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
woo,
Yeah. All right. Go right ahead, Paul. People are listening in for you.
Can you still hear me?
Yep. Go right ahead, Paul.
Okay, what do you want me to discuss? Well, I don't remember where we are.
Well, go ahead. You can introduce yourself and people will ask questions. I think people are particularly interested in your role on the TUE committee and on your thoughts about the climate bills that are sitting in the conference committee. Please.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, Paul Mark here, outgoing state representative for the 2nd Berkshire District, which has been 29 different communities in 3 counties over the past 11 and a half years. Currently vice chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. There's a lot going on right now. I'm not on the conference committee, but there's a conference committee that is working out differences in the House version of the energy bill, which focused on offshore wind, and the Senate version, which was much more wide-ranging. And what I've been told is that there's the potential for adding other elements into that bill that weren't necessarily included in either the House or Senate versions. As we sit here today, obviously we know that the clock is ticking as we try to get toward not just August 1st when the formal sessions are over, but as we try to make sure that there's time in case a bill gets to the governor and he either vetoes or offers amendments or anything like that. If people want me to talk about or answer questions about that, I'm happy to do so. If people want to talk or answer questions about green bank bills or anything else, I'm very happy to have that discussion.
Yes, why don't you go ahead and speak about the green bank? That's something that ECA is very much in favor of and that we have been talking about with our members.
Great. So green bank is a bill I've been filing for a number of sessions, and some of the background was there was a different bill about commercial PACE, which would be like a lending, borrowing, bonding program to try to finance renewable energy projects. And at the time, the bill that was filed by a former senator, it included natural gas as a clean energy fuel. And so myself and several people in my district, especially in Franklin County and in Greenfield, didn't feel that natural gas was a clean fuel, and certainly didn't think it was a great alternative to anything else moving forward as we try to transition to a cleaner environment. And so I tried to work with the senator to get the natural gas element taken out, and he wasn't willing to accept that. And so to find a way around that, instead of filing like a rival bill, I did some research, worked with different organizations, and came up with this idea of a green bank. And so a green bank is essentially a revolving loan fund that ideally would be placed within state government, within the Massachusetts state government, but act independently. And the point would be to get money into the hands of either municipalities, individuals, groups, employers that are looking to undertake green projects. So projects that are focused on renewable energy, hopefully unleashing some of the job creation potential that would be available in Massachusetts. And really the need comes from when some of these projects are looking for financing, and if they go to a traditional bank, a commercial bank, well, some of the metrics that are used by these commercial banks just aren't feasible for people that are undertaking renewable projects. And that can be something in terms of maybe the profit margin, especially in terms of how quick, can't be met in the time scale that banks that answer to Wall Street or investors are looking for. But also a major factor is some of the timeline, that sometimes the projects are going to take a long time to get up and running, and then the payoff period is going to also be pretty long. So trying to find a different independent way of making that happen. Having former Chair Golden of TUE and former Speaker DeLeo both individually visit Greenfield and meet with advocates led to a lot of interest, and led to the House proposing last session, the 2019-2020 session, a bill that they call Green Works, which was a bond program administered by the state government that would have had, I believe, $100 million, 10 million per year. I could be getting the numbers wrong because it's been a few years, but would allow projects to be financed by the state government, very similar to the Green Bank, but more directly controlled by the state. That got kind of sidetracked because of COVID, and then reemerged this year as a bill called Green Futures. And so from the last I heard, Chair Roy on the House side is extremely interested in doing a green financing piece before the session is over. And again, if during the conference committee negotiations can get something included, has indicated to me, both personally and publicly, that this would be something the House wants to make sure happens. And if the negotiations wrapped up quickly for the conference committee without something like that, that we would try to pass it as a standalone bill or as part of a finance package. So I hope that wasn't too long. It's really weird when you can't see the people you're talking to.
Yes, we are using all the technology we can here. We're just glad to have you. We do have a question here from Ed Wall, who is a climate champion, now lives in Somerville. He says, how Green Bank would relate to landlords who want to retrofit and upgrade residential units?
So in my outlook, my vision of a green bank, they would be eligible for a way to make that happen. And I wasn't able to attend this tour. It was public housing, but in the city of Salem yesterday, there was a tour for legislators about a public housing development that they're trying to get to net zero, and they're doing a lot of work on. And I see a lot of potential for that. But again, in my vision, it wouldn't be limited to municipal entities or quasi-government entities. I would want private landlords and private builders, private enterprises able to try to access this money as well. Obviously meeting the metrics, making sure that it's clean, and we want it to be successful, the project. So like we're not talking about a program where people would just blindly get money. They'd have to meet metrics, but it would just be metrics that are compatible with renewable energy projects being successful.
Thank you. Other questions for Rep. Mark? Go ahead, Mayim.
I'm just thinking maybe to backtrack, I don't know if everybody is familiar with the whole idea of a green bank, and maybe a little bit of more general background on how that works and what it can do would be good.
Okay, I just realized that I'm on my earbuds, and so probably
I can't hear anybody.
Paul Mark couldn't hear you. So could you ask that question again, Mayim?
I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the whole idea of a green bank, how it's set up, what the basis for that is, where the money comes from and how it works. So just a little bit more general context might be a good idea.
So Paul, could you just illuminate a little bit more about the green bank, what it would do, how it would be set up for everyone? Thank you.
It's actually difficult to illuminate on that because I've always maintained the position I'm less concerned with the exact logistics. I don't care as much as who gets appointed to the board of directors or which agency it ends up working in. I've always been less concerned with that and always more concerned with, I want this to happen. I want this to get out there. I want this to start getting money into the hands of people that are going to make a difference. And so as we sit here, I can't tell you if this were to pass, what it would look like. And even when I talk to Jeff Roy, who has taken advantage of every month we have an educational meeting for the members of the committee. They call it like TUE Tuesdays or something. And he has had the Connecticut Green Bank on. He has had the Coalition for Green Capital on. He has had a totally different group I'd say 4 different presentations have come on to talk about green financing, and they all have a different plan for what it would actually physically look like. And while I would always make sure that there was nothing passed that I would want, that would be, again, considering like natural gas as one of the clean fuels or something crazy like oil. And I wouldn't want this to be something that just profited major international corporations or banks like that. Other than that, I'm very flexible with what it would actually come down to. And then as we get to the end of Governor Baker's term, if this were to pass and be signed into law and everything's set by August 1st, I think it's very unlikely that the current governor would actually implement it and put it into place. So I think the lobbying efforts would be to ask this administration to just kind of do some legwork, kind of do some research, and then the lobbying would be directed more at the next administration. But again, that depends too on what executive agency this ultimately ended up in, or if it just ended up completely independent, which would be as like a quasi government entity, which would be more my preference.
Great, thank you. Sally, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Could I ask a question off the topic of the Green Bank related to TUE?
Okay, I'm having trouble switching from my earbuds to my my computer speaker. So I'm going to take your question in my earbud and then say it to Rep. Mark.
Okay. I'm curious about where the TUE stands at present relating to the towns, including Lexington, I think Concord, allowing them to prohibit gas hookups, fossil fuel hookups for new constructions and massive renovation. It's been stuck in TUE for
Right.
the session. Thank
So,
you.
yeah, so Paul, she's asking about the towns that have are looking to ban fossil fuel in all new construction, where that bill sits in TUE, and what your thoughts are about that.
I believe it's still alive, but it hasn't obviously been passed into law or anything like that. So what I think you're talking about, and I can't look up anything because I'm standing on my phone, is a local option. I think that's a fair idea, and I would support it if it came up for a vote.
Thank you.
And I guess I should add to that. I've been the lead sponsor of a bill to make it that all public buildings that are built have to be net zero. So I strongly support the concept for sure.
Just for information, the local option is one amendment in the Senate's amendments that are being considered with the wind bill.
Thank you, Dave. Roger, your hand is up.
Yeah, of course, there's a there's a bill to expand the PACE program to residential homes. I'm curious what you think about that and if it has a chance to get into the climate bill.
So Roger's asking about the PACE program and if that would be able to get into the climate bill. Is that what you're saying?
It's called residential PACE program, and it's a bill in TUE.
It's a bill in TUE, the residential PACE program.
Yeah, that is also one of the possibilities. Rep. Chicolo from, I believe, Lexington, that area, is the lead on that bill right now. And she is advocating for that to be the finance piece. And then Rep. Driscoll is advocating, who's from, I think, Milton, he's advocating for the Green Futures Bill to be the path forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you. Alan, your hand is up.
Yeah, hi, Representative Marks. My name is Alan Fierce. I'm a retired environmental lawyer, and I've been following very closely the implementation of the roadmap bill by the administration, and have been looking at some of the deadlines that are coming up. We've got 2 features of the roadmap bill that are reaching a critical point in time at the end of the month here, because on July 1, we're required, the administration, EEA, will be required to submit their plan for 2025 and 2030 to achieve the interim limits for those dates. And one other thing that's somewhat been overlooked is the provision in the roadmap bill that requires EEA every 18 months after one of these critical deadlines to submit the emissions data. And so the 2020 emissions data are due to be submitted to the legislature 18 months after the end of 2020. And that's again, July 1. And I'm just wondering whether and TUE or anybody up there at the legislature is going to be prepared to receive these documents, to look at them, to provide them a little bit of scrutiny and, and feedback. I know the press is going to be looking to the legislature for its reaction to these plans and the emissions. And unfortunately, it comes right in the middle of your final end of the session activities. But I am hoping that all of this just doesn't get lost in the wash.
So Rep. Mark, Alan Fierce is asking about the current CECP is going to be coming out with their final draft in July. Do you see your role in the legislature to look at that new CECP and to have any oversight over it? It's going to be coming out at a tight timeline with your end of session. Alan's wondering what kind of response you would make to that.
Is this, if no one knows the answer, that's fine. Is this a set of regulations that the TUE committee gets input in, or is this like we did with some of the solar changes, or is this the type that a regulatory process is going to happen, and then if we don't like it, we're going to have to follow up with legislation? And again, if no one knows the answer, that's fine.
Alan, you want to say?
Yeah, it's not regulations. They're coming out with a plan for achieving.
This is the CECP plan, the clean energy climate plan from the administration.
Emissions reduction.
So all right. So because I don't know the specifics off the top of my head, I'm gonna just give like a little background. There are times when administrative agencies offer regulations, and it's rare, but there are rare occasions where TUE committee specifically has the opportunity to offer suggestions, offer input. And with some of the biomass and some of the solar regulations that came out earlier last year, I believe, earlier this session, TUE had a chance to offer official comments, which can be taken or can be completely ignored. Now, that being said, if it's a situation where an agency is just changing regulations through their own process, if someone feels that it doesn't comply with what the law says, then opportunities exist for whether it's legislators or individuals or organizations to file a suit to try to get the agency into compliance. If it's something where it's just they're complying technically with the letter of the law, but what they've come up with is garbage, then I think the proper approach is to offer new legislation that would change that. But then when we get into the timeline of how the legislature works, if a new bill can't make it to be either signed or overridden, a veto of the governor completed by August 1st, then we're talking about trying to file legislation that would make these changes starting in January of next year.
Okay, Alan, any response to that? Alan's chewing on his lunch here.
Well, I'll say is if it's a if something comes out that is not good and people want legislation filed to change it, I am happy to work on that. I assume the timeline would be moving into January for sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We just have a couple more minutes left here. I see your constituent Sherry Morgan has her hand up.
Sherry knows more about the Green Bank than I do.
I wanted to ask Tina if, because the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is so comprehensive, does Paul think would it be appropriate for the the Global Warming and Climate Change Committee to hold some hearings about that plan, because they are not a committee that produces legislation. Would that be a good role for that committee?
Thank you, Sherry. So Sherry's asking if you think the Global Warming Solutions Committee would be a good place to hold some hearings on the Clean Energy Climate Plan.
Yeah, that's always a good. I know Senator Pacheco, he really likes to do that, and he really likes to have a robust hearing schedule and to try to make sure there's a lot of public attention or a lot of public input, even if what they ultimately end up doing isn't as, maybe doesn't have as many teeth in it as something that a different committee can do. On the House side, I found it to be a little less proactive this session, but there's certainly potential if people reach out to Sean Garbely and ask him to do some public hearings. I mean, it's a good time of year for that kind of thing to be happening. And then where they only serve it generally in an advisory capacity anyway, even if session's over on August 1st, like there's no reason a House Committee on Global Warming couldn't have a nice hearing schedule for the fall where the public gets to just weigh in and really offer suggestions on what they'd like to see in terms of legislation as we all, God willing, start to move into the January 2023 session.
Okay, great. I think we'll take a last question again from Ed. Go ahead, Ed. Again, you're talking to me in my earbud, and I'm going to translate it to Paul.
Okay. Yes, I know Mass Save is a program that both the Senate and the House have been concerned about. Is there any appetite with the TUE or the Conference Committee that you know of to wrest some of the control of the expenditure of Mass Save funds from the utilities so they can be used more directly to finance conversions to retrofit houses, and also finance conversions to renewable energy facilities as opposed to gas powered facilities?
Right. So Ed's asking about your opinion about, his words, wrestling some of the power from Mass Save from the utilities to put to more use for retrofitting and electrification in residential and buildings.
So to take some of the power away from utilities and put it more to, was it the customer side? Am I hearing it right?
Have the legislature direct more directly the application of Mass Save funds and take some of that
The
authority away from the
legislature.
DPU.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well,
The legislature would have more say in the distribution of the funding.
Yeah, I would love that personally. I think the utility companies have way too much say and way too much power. I don't actually understand why. Like I understand there's a level of deference to what is essentially a monopoly, that sometimes there's an assumption, well, they've been doing this for 120 years, so they probably know what they're talking about. And then I think when people think about lobbyists, I don't think it's a matter of donations to any elected officials per se. I think it's more a matter of they have an active public relations team who is available to answer questions for you and like, you know, spends a lot of time when the State House is open, walking around and getting to know people. And it's an advantage they have. And so I don't think there's any reason why they have such a firm advantage is a long story of what I'm trying to get at. And I would prefer they didn't, because I think they mostly act in their own interests and not necessarily in the interests of the consumer or the ratepayer. And so, yeah, I would like to see either the legislature or even some kind of outside watchdog group being way more involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you everybody for hanging in there. Thank you, Rep. Mark, so much for calling in and for answering some of our questions. Yeah, and we will be in touch again. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone, I guess we've come to the end today. Thanks everybody for hanging in there. And we look for our action alerts that are going to be coming out, and hope to see you all at the deep dialogue at the end of the month on the 27th.
And I would encourage, I put the action alert link again into the chat. So if people want to hang around for a few minutes and click it right now before you forget, please go ahead and do it. It's ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
All right.